There's some more box office news out from China for Avengers Endgame. They have a partial Saturday amount of money, bringing its total to $268.59 million. Now, the Saturday will increase from that. That's just from part of Saturday. I don't think it would double from that figure there, but it will go up. So it's got $51.5 million reporting in for Saturday so far. But again, I don't think it will go up to $100 million, but I really don't know where it'll go. I think it's safe to bet it'll get at least $70 million at this rate for the Saturday. But just sticking with what's actually reported, just over $50 million so far for Saturday, bringing the Chinese total box office for Endgame to $268.59 million. There haven't really been any other major updates from sort of semi-credible places I can find. So if you look at Box Office Mojo, for example, and Numbers.com, they're both still reporting $365 million in total for worldwide box office, which is the $60 million opening advanced screening money, and $305 million internationally. Now that $305 million internationally, that still only includes about $151 million from countries that aren't China. And so if we add the $151 million, which is basically just from 1 or maybe 2 days from some countries, there's a lot more money to go into it, but China number is updating. If we add the $151 million to the current Chinese total, we get $419 million for the total foreign amount of money that's basically confirmed at this stage, but there's more money to go in at this specific point in time. So the 419 does not represent what the total is at this point in time. It represents the reported total, which is missing lots of money. So it'll go up from here just at this actual point in time. And if we look at the total foreign opening records, $419 million takes us past Infinity War now. So it has broken the amount of money that Infinity War got internationally, $382 million. It is still a little bit shy of the actual number one film. And again, this is missing basically Friday for everyone except for China. It's missing Saturday for everyone except for China, and a lot of Chinese money on Saturday. It's missing Sunday for everyone. It's missing a lot of money from Thursday. It's probably got most of the money that was earned on the Wednesday internationally. Not all, but probably most. So this is pretty much Wednesday, most of Thursday, maybe half of Friday. It's hard to tell how much it'll be. Maybe less than half of Saturday and none of Sunday. So obviously it still looks like it'll smash the Fate of the Furious, but it has already overtaken Avengers Infinity War. And if we add the $60 million, which is all we have confirmed out of the US domestic market at this stage, we get $479 million for our current world total box office for Endgame. If we look at the opening world records, we can see that puts it just above Captain Marvel as the 6th biggest opening record so far. Again, this 479 is smaller than what the real figure is at this point in time. This is just the reported numbers at this point in time. So it's already overtaken Captain Marvel, and plenty of days to go as well. And again, that's only with the advanced screening money from the US, so we've got way more money to go on here. But at this early stage, it's just behind Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. It is the 6th largest worldwide opening ever, and we've still got loads of money to go. Now, most reports have been revised up quite drastically, or at least beyond the upper limit for the US domestic market. So a lot of places now are talking up can it go over the $300 million mark, which, yeah, it was kind of mentioned maybe it could get $300 million, but now more optimism is there. So obviously we'll have to wait until the Friday numbers come in to start really having to predict what could happen. But a lot of places are now saying, yep, $300 million domestic US market can definitely happen. And also a $140 million or more for the opening weekend. So this is exactly what Box Office Mojo is also saying as well, and that's just the general consensus of what a lot of people are projecting right now. So they're reckoning more than $140 million for the opening day. So if it does get more than $140 million, which means it'll be $80 million on the Friday, $60 million on the Thursday, that takes it pretty close to being the all-time record for just an actual day itself. So the largest actual one-day record that's actually in an actual day is $82 million, which Infinity War got on its Saturday. And so if it gets $140 million, that means it would have gotten $80 million on the Friday. So maybe it can get $82 million or $83 million on Friday, and that would give it the absolute record no matter how you want to calculate it. That would give it the most amount of money in an actual 24-hour period, and it would give it the sort of quote-unquote real record where you can add advanced screenings money in as well. So that record set to go down. where can it go from here? But again, $300 million domestic debut. I've seen a few places saying like 340. I think that's the upper limit that anyone's entertaining. I've seen written in an actual article, but then they're just putting that as a range though, which is probably a smart move to go. Okay, an extra 10 to 20% is, a good amount of wiggle room. And if you're going to say 300 million is your middle estimate, then saying something like, plus or minus 30 million, which is just a silly amount of money to be plus or minusing, but that's where we are here. So maybe 330 million is a good way to put your upper estimate if you think 300 is realistic, and 270 at the lower end. At the large multiplex, or one of the large multiplexes in New York, the AMC Empire 25, they had 43 screenings listed for the Thursday night. Now, some of those weren't actually Thursday night, they were Friday morning, but nonetheless, they had 43 screenings listed. And now what they've got listed for the Friday are 74 screenings. So they've obviously got a lot more screenings rolling out after the advanced screenings, which earned $60 million. Now, the advanced screening started at 6 p.m. So, yes, they can put in a lot more screenings because they can now start at like 1 a.m. or whatever, 12 a.m. So they have a full 24-hour period. So there's a lot more screenings available. A lot of them are still getting very full or almost full. So there's still lots of demand for the film. And, that's maybe where the projections are coming for this $140 million plus estimate for opening day record for Avengers Endgame. But if we look over the weekend, again, back to these weekend predictions that some people are putting out there of getting more than $300 million, which I think is looking far, far more likely now for more than $300 million, China is also looking like it's going to put in more than $300 million at this stage. So which region, or I don't want to say which country, because the US domestic market is both Canada and North America, but can the domestic market actually get outdone by another market for an American film? So China will outdo, opening weekends and total grosses for Chinese films over other countries. I think there's a film that no one's probably heard of called, I believe it's Wolf Warrior 2, which made something like $850 million in China, and it made like $10 million, in other countries. It had a very low release rate in other countries. So you can get big money in China, but, not for a non-Chinese film compared to the money earned in America generally for something this big. Now, having said that, I've just thought of a lot of films that makes that a complete lie. So I think World of Warcraft, or Warcraft, I guess you could call it an American film, and China smashed that out and no one else liked it. And Alita Battle Angel, China actually earned way more money for that film, I think, than it did in North America. So that's not quite true. But for an MCU film, I think it would have been unheard of to think that an opening day would perhaps be biggest not in North America. Now, I'm not saying the total box office for China will be stronger than in North America, but the opening weekend, it's looking kind of neck and neck maybe at this stage. China's looking like more than $300 million. North America's getting projected to be more than $300 million. One interesting thing to come out, which is very difficult to analyze because it's not really happened before, but it's the Captain Marvel release and how much money Captain Marvel's made. Captain Marvel's getting close, I believe, to $1.1 billion. It's maybe crossed it by now. That's the absolute upper limit where I thought it would earn. I thought it would be between $850 million and $1.1 billion originally, and I said way closer to 850 than 1.1, but it's went the other way around. International numbers have been very, very strong for Captain Marvel, and calling in Captain Hindsight here, we can see that if Captain Marvel, a film that is based on a character we've never seen before and basically no one knows, but it has been sandwiched in as having something to do with Infinity War and Endgame, because the page we know at the end of Infinity War had her symbol, so there's a lot of hype behind it without any knowledge behind it, and we got this massive sort of opening from Captain Marvel. Now we've got the actual film itself that's causing the hype, and it's got, an even more massive opening. So if Captain Marvel can get whatever it was, $450 million open, then it just sounds logical at this stage. Again, using hindsight, wow, why won't the film that all of Captain Marvel's hype's based on get at least twice as much money for the opening weekend? Okay, so if Captain Marvel can get $450 million opening weekend, yeah, surely Endgame can get 900. It's a bit crazy to think that the film that caused all the hype can't even get twice as much money. So now it's looking like it'll easily get over the 900 million. Again, $1 billion still on track, still looking good for $1 billion. But with hindsight, I'm sure that looks like a very easy thing to come up with now, and undoubtedly there'll be a lot of articles talking about it. But it is an interesting thing just to see this sort of genius marketing that has worked out. I remember when Captain Marvel was still not released yet, there was some people concerned that because it was fairly close to Endgame, it was a lot closer to Endgame's release than Black Panther was to Infinity War, there was concerns that it may steal some money away. It'll grab some of the science fiction people and the superhero people, and having seen a film a couple of months earlier, they may be less inclined to see another one. And there was some articles worrying that Captain Marvel may well hurt the Endgame box office. And then when Captain Marvel had a really big open, those fears went away, which makes no sense to me, because if it had a big open, then that's even worse news if you do think it's going to steal money, because you've stolen more money. But that was a concern that was raised at the time. Is this going to actually hurt the Endgame box office? And the concerns went the other way as well. If Captain Marvel flopped, was that going to hurt Endgame? So, both sides of the coin were sort of taken for how Captain Marvel was going to hurt things. But if Captain Marvel has hurt Endgame's box office, there's no way we can measure it. But because Endgame's breaking records, I think it's hard to say that. But who knows? Maybe that $1.1 billion Captain Marvel got, maybe all of that could just be put at the end of Endgame, and that's $1.1 billion Endgame's not going to get. I don't think so, but I'm sure there's probably some arguments people will make to say exactly that. So right now we're really just waiting for some new international numbers from not China to come in for Friday, and we're waiting for the Friday news to come in for the US domestic market. How big can Endgame get? Again, it's still on track to get $1 billion. It's going to be around about there somewhere. There's still a lot of room in there. We're talking about plus or minus hundreds of millions of dollars, which is a silly amount of money to be talking about. But $1 billion, I mean, at this stage, can it get $1.1 billion? I can see that that's possible. Obviously, that's harder than just the one, but we're talking about, we might accidentally just go over by 100 million. It could even go higher than that, but I'm certainly not predicting that it'll do anything like that. But the amount of money here we're dealing with is just crazy. So, it could be out by 10%, out by 20%, and that means, $1.2 billion opening weekend. I don't think that'll happen, but it's possible. We're just dealing with silly money right now. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.